two documents from way back April and May when the legislation was first getting developed, and the points we were making there, which were a little bit broader and trying to, have some influence on the legislation. And then you see the last two pieces are much more recent, and to the redistricting task force, we're focused a lot more on, at this point, on things like, we have, honestly, Vermont has an extremely unique, complicated, kind of stupid structure for governing schools. And, if you think back, it all started with, again, a burden existed before public schools. So when you start putting public schools in place, then, how do we write the rules so that they fit in too? And over a couple hundred years, you keep on bolting new things onto it, and it becomes a Frankenstein law. And, I think at this point, one of the points we're trying to make is, the redistricting task force, if they're put in a position of having to come up with 3 new maps for, putting districts together, one, don't let yourself get bogged down and make that utterly impossible by saying that we have to stick to all the old rules. This is the opportunity you have to say, well, if they don't make sense, then why don't we reconsider? And I don't think we've necessarily got that point across strongly enough yet. But the last two pieces, which, we worked on together, again, there we go.
No, I had a question about the supervisory district and supervisory union too. But the task force could merely make a recommendation, and you're asking to make a recommendation. But to change that would be a legislative.
Yep.
Right.
But at the same time, I think the point we're trying to make to the task force is, as you come up, you could, your models could include, well, here's a model you could do if you change the laws this way.
If you change them, right.
And slightly more than 50% of the task force are legislators.
There you go.
So that's
helpful. And legislators with some say and some, some oomph in the, you got, definitely.
Well, no, I agree with that. That would be great. It's just that trying to think about how it would actually work. It would be equally complex to a supervisory union structure if you had a bunch of different structures within a bigger supervisory district, especially one that's like, 4,000 minimum, right? It would still be, we wouldn't be solving a complexity issue, but I understand it would be,
I think we can, yeah. I genuinely think we let go of supervisory union, supervisory districts, school districts, unified union districts. Like for a school, a state that is as small as we are, we have to have the most complicated organizational systems.
That doesn't exist anywhere else.
No, we just keep compounding the complexity for absolutely no reason. So if we really simplify it, there's for sure ways that we can maintain just about everything that we've got in the state with a far simpler system.
But could it survive a legal challenge, right? Like if you have different structures within the same district.
But why do we don't have to do that.
But it's somebody, like if one town didn't have what the other towns did, like if everybody was grandfathered into the same district, and they could say, hey, it's not equitable.
But it can.
Well, that's what Act 46. That's why Act 46 had the requirement of like-to-like districts.
Right.
And if you look at, what is the BRSU right now? BRSU is, an overarching structure for 3 different sets of communities that have different choice structures.
Right.
Why couldn't the SU become an SD and maintain that?
Because it has a legal test.
But
I don't think districts now do.
I think that's why they did it. But that's why they did it, right?
If that's possible.
Sure. Yeah.
So everyone is still thinking about the potential systems in the state on the current constructs. And as we are talking reform, it doesn't have to be that way. So right now, as I talk to my colleagues, and I think this is the simplest kind of way to begin to think about this is there can be a district that has 6 elementary schools. And in those elementary schools, kids from different regions don't have access to all of those places. They go to,
They don't have to.
they're assigned to a school, and this child doesn't have access to this, but this one has access to this. So, and there's some where they've got inter-district choice and they can go to any place. So there is equal opportunity, right? So really the discussion of choice is only applying to independent schools. And so I think if you really start to unpack it, if you take a region like ours, and we don't have this fully fleshed out. There's still a lot of work, but I think that the idea of saying, let's say that the SBSU and the BRSU join. I think like 8 of the 18 independent schools that are eligible for tuition dollars are within that region, 8 of the 18. Okay, when we talk about the size of the problem across the state, it's really not big.
It's not big, right?
If all of a sudden those schools are now part of that district, and we operate the way another district operates, we have a system that looks very much like any other system. And so I think it really comes down to how do we rethink opportunities, how do we rethink what can happen and can't happen within the district, and how do independent schools that are eligible for current tuition, using that language, now fit into a new structure. Like, everything can be different. And kids in a community like ours can still maintain a lot of what they currently have. But it's going to take, and this is what I said when I was meeting with somebody, like having a conversation with somebody about on the task force, this is an intellectual and creative challenge. So it's going to take people sitting and working and reworking to conceptualize what can be. And I think it's very worth it, because when we sit down with Mark or Colin, they don't really have a good understanding what a supervisory union is, or a supervisory district, or a school district. It just kind of reiterates that our system is so confusing that people who've even been here for decades don't understand what we do. So my point is just simply that we should not try to be building a new reform system that's gonna be better for kids on a model that's.
I don't disagree with you, I'm just saying, like,
But
it's gonna require a legislative
100%.
push.
Right,
Yeah.
because we have that preconceived notion that's been set into place by the old governance structure.
Sure.
It says, you know, everything that was behind Act 46. If you're a K to 6 and a K to 8, if you're gonna merge together, then one of you is gonna have to change your form.
Right.
And that, you know, that was the only way it would work.
Right.
But, you know, we have that so ingrained that at the same time.
To be fair, that was law. It wasn't that it was just the idea, they had to do it for legal reasons.
Right.
And so that's what I'm trying to point out, is that we just went through this huge legislative process. I mean, it was a slog. It took months. We got it over the line. There would be a similar legislative push to get that kind of change through.
Mhm.
Maybe not quite as big, but it would be a political brawl, just in the same sense that we just went through.
It could be, but that's where I think, you know.
And I understand the creative intellectual part. I'm right there with you. But when it gets down to brass tacks, I mean.
There's still so many
Yes.
legislative changes that are still ahead of us. This is just potentially one more piece.
But it's also, you know, basically it's the format, the structure we set up.
Right.
So that you did have, a supervisory union made up of 2 districts that have different choice. And then if they said, we want to become an SD and we're willing to just have one board, but each of those, all the communities that were part of that before should have the same choice, what is the difference? It, it isn't, it was all acceptable before for this group of students and this group of students from these communities to have those choices. All you're doing is saying, they say, a supervisory district, we think it's gonna be more efficient and we're comfortable with one board overseeing it all. Why is that drastically different than when, it's okay when you have those two municipal legal entities there, but if you take those municipal legal entities out, then all of a sudden it's unequal. It just fundamentally, it doesn't hold up to, any real scrutiny or logic.
But the point is what will have to change is everywhere in that book where it says district, right?
Right.
Like that, and I think task force and the legislature intended that for the task force, that they know that's what's gonna have to happen. Task force can't come out with recommendations. It's not gonna require legislative change.
Agreed.
Right? It's just what we're talking about here is bigger than what
Right.
they probably were thinking of originally.
Because groups like the Rural School Community Alliance actually were key to, along with Seth Bongarth pushing on the idea of one of those three maps has to include supervisory unions. Before, that wasn't gonna be the case.
Right.
And if you had only SDs, how could you possibly do that across the state with bigger districts?
And I think it's important. I think it's important to remember that it's already a legislative issue, right? Like the legislature already ripped up the old system and said, we're going to come up with something better.
Right.
The problem is that no one can agree on what something better looks like. But the idea that they're going to have to legislate the solution, I mean, that's already a given. Like that's already where we're at.
Yeah. Thanks. So anyway, sorry, I wanted to make sure we have that sort of discussion here, so everybody's, and other ideas, thoughts, bring them in all the time. I think we're gonna have to continue to beat the drum on these issues, and want to make sure if people aren't comfortable with that, then, we should continue to talk and want to make sure everybody's comfortable, because we are speaking for all our districts, basically.
And another point to that, sort of in that same vein, is if you wanna ignore the sense that we're making and the logic that we're bringing to the table by proposing a larger change, then you're looking at a system that is SUs that have 7, 8, 10 boards. That becomes unmanageable and unwieldy.
And backwards in time.
And exactly, and
Right
It
now,
won't save any money.
it won't save money, and
It'll create a lot of conflicts.
it will, and the desire of a lot of, these small districts to maintain their local control is exactly why we are in the financial predicament that we are in. So to maintain a system that has done nothing but hurt us into a financial predicament is illogical in all ways. So I think that we can make that point, and maybe we need to work on making it more strongly. I don't know. It sounds like you've met with somebody on the task force. If that's the case, that's fantastic. I think that's the sort of stuff that we need to be able to do.
Yeah, I personally, I just think from dealing with a variety of things, through, it's nice being on the VSBA board, Mel and I do it now. And you get to see things at a different perspective. You see it at the statewide level, what's going on. And I've also, it's given a good opportunity to, and you guys all get the VSBA, weekly updates and all that stuff too. It's a lot of good info. It kind of gives you a sense of how things happen in Montpelier. And I'll tell you, over the years, start to realize, just continuing to hammer away at points that make sense from a lot of different people has a big influence.
right.
So, I think you've got something that's a sensible point, Do we just shoot, throw it up there once and say, oh, they'll figure out what to do with it? No, they won't. If you send it to them, 14 times from 12 different people, then they start going, holy crap, we got to do something about this. And, that, I think it's important that we continue to, hopefully, I think we're pretty united on, so, not everything, but a lot of the stuff that, what makes sense for us. We have to be protective of our system because nobody else is going to do it for us, because of our different structure and all. So I think, we continue to do it, and I just think it's important that we have some of these discussions out in the open to make sure that people aren't uncomfortable.
If it comes down to it, the supervisory union is a decent runner-up. I mean, I guess is what I'm,
I think it's just what Jolie said. If you look at, talking to Melanie earlier about, we're like thinking about ways, okay, if the Southern Vermont Supervisory Union and the Bennington Rockland Supervisory Union were to try to come together, they have a horrifically ugly structure down there, just like, we've got a simplified structure here now, but they've got different choices and different kinds of districts and all this stuff. We try to put that whole thing together. That's it. I defy anybody to come up with a logical way to make that actually functional.
Well, and I think it's important to know, like, if we're going to think about SUs as a runner-up, right? Your districts are going to be ripped apart and stuffed back together in ways that communities will likely hate. Because it doesn't make sense to have a 10-board SU.
Or between SPSU and BRSU, let's put together all of our K6 districts. So we may have something like, you have like Woodford and Meadowee.
Right.
Yeah. No, I know it's not clean.
Or you don't do that, or you geographically take things and totally change the way that system operates.
Yep.
And then you will have a revolt.
Yeah.
If that's what happens. So those are, like, people need to take that into account too. Like, it's going to either make no sense or you're going to make people very, very angry.
Yeah, it kind of comes back to the whole idea behind Act 73 is to provide better education to kids at a better cost. And, and Vermont's historic system of governance and education in general is, again, it's just a horror story, the way it's put together right now. And
it's just patchwork over 200 years.
Yeah.
Supervisory union at the scales we're talking about would be no discernible benefit to educational outcomes at 3 times the price. Like, it's just too big. It's too, you can't. So the problem is that the number of students that they've mandated be in these new, whatever they are, let's just not use a term because we don't know what we're going to call them. But these new systems are going to have much larger numbers of students. And when you scale a supervisory union up to that size, you get 3 times the problems with no benefit. It's just more costly, more inefficient, and it's not a good fit. So I don't think we should consider supervisory union as a runner-up. I think we should consider it as like an avenue of last resort. I think at this point in the process, it's a red herring.
And right now, there are a bunch of districts that are fighting really, really, really hard to make sure it's just SUs. So I think, just from our perspective, I mean, we have some obligation to try to convince them that, maybe there's a different path.
If there were a clear path to, like, and it was good what you put in the letter, a clear path to maintaining, the access to independent schools and choice through the supervisory district model, I think a lot more people would jump onto that. But right now, there's not.
But right now,
You know, where I know I fully support exploring ways that
I
we
think
could do that.
they
Yeah.
are,
You
because
know.
they haven't had the IP yet,
Right?
They haven't heard our IP yet, like,
Okay.
it needs to be,
Yeah.
it needs to be broadly shared. I think if that happens, then people can wrap their head around, you know, what we're saying, and it will make sense. The other point to that, the other side of that coin is to say, okay, let's take your SU, and here's what we're gonna do.
Right.
And show examples of ripping their systems apart and sticking them back together in ways that geographically make sense, and take districts that have had full choice and say, no, you're all going to this school, it's the closest one to you, period, end of sentence, that's it. And there are communities that makes no sense to do that to. Because geographically, like, one little nook of it is 5 minutes down the road from school X, and 99% of the rest of the community is 5 minutes down the road from like school Y. Pointing those out is fine, but I don't think we should be like, this is an alternative that works. We should be like, this is going to be a mess if we do it this way.
let's just continue. Again, we will continue. We've had a couple of documents in the works with different, we're trying to figure out what the heck we're trying to do with them, but, you know, and, you know, we'll continue to try to work and keep everybody up to date, but, you know, again, just a periodic check-in at the board level, just to make sure nobody's saying, are you guys a bunch of idiots or what? So, appreciate it. Okay, any other questions on the legislative and all that stuff? We also have the VSBA annual conference coming up. Some of us are going to definitely be there. There are 2 days. It's up in Burlington this time. And I just recommend, you know, it is worthwhile. It's, you know, you could, you know, even if you could just do the 1 day where they have a whole lot of different sessions that you can learn from. You also just get exposure to a whole lot of other school board members from around the state. And just my little plug for, you know, it's worthwhile. Also, the VSBA, since this is the VSBA and legislative update, VSBA is also going to be having the regional meetings coming up pretty soon. With my, you know, be really happy if a lot of people from our districts could sign up for those.
Are those in September?
Yes, and the big draw this year is what? It is a big draw. It's the what, the heads of the redistricting task force or something. We're gonna, I think, be there. You know, sorry, I'm not.
I didn't notice.
I think it's well, because you're not a school board member. But I think it's, you know, the chair, you know, the co-chairs of the redistricting task force, I think, are coming and going to be presenting. Also, Melanie Virgilio will be up for getting reelected as regional rep from Bennington County Region. It is all online, so anybody can do it. It's all virtual. So, you know, please sign up. Okay, anything else on that? Not then. And we're with our redone agenda, you know, reflect on norms. Any thoughts, complaints? No? Then
We're
public.
really crushing it on the last one.
Hey, the legislature, yeah, we're sorry about that. Public comment. We have no public here. All right, so let's move on to the next meeting date is September 22nd. And then I'm looking for a motion to go into executive session.
I'll move that we enter executive session for the evaluation of employee for Title I, subsection 313A3.
Second.
15 seconds. Okay, all in favor?
And invite Randy.
And Randy is
We
invited.
also need to say plus the
Okay,
rest.
that's unanimous? Any opposed? Any abstentions?
For Dawn, we have to
After
actually
making
say
specific
the whole motion as prepared.
We should.
So that's why I asked,
I will restate my motion to go into executive session for the evaluation of employee per Title I subsection 313A3 after making a specific finding that premature general public knowledge would clearly place the public body or person involved at a substantial disadvantage. Dean, do you accept my amended motion?
Accept as amended.
Okay, and then all in favor is, raise your hand or, okay, anyone against? Lindsay, go.
she got her.
Your timing was bad there. Any abstentions? Okay, that appears to be unanimous. And where we're going into executive session is for personnel issues and employee review.
Okay, so Don, you can stop recording
Yes.
and
I think you
We'll
will
ask-
get my.
It's fine.
you and Keegan to leave the meeting. Thank you.
She was stating.
We don't need to.
Don?
Yep, I'm leaving,
Oh, no, hold on.
Yeah.
Keegan, are you there?
We're not making a decision.
But they're there.
Don, it looks like he might not be here. Can you remove him from the meeting, please?
Keegan?
Yeah,
Yep, hold on.
thank you.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
All right.
Good night. Thank you.
Remove the call, okay.